Georgia. Hi, everybody. Eimear Burke here. Welcome to another Fireside Chat. And this is Fireside Chat 189, where I'm in conversation with a member of the Order of Bards, Ovates and Druids. And as is customary, I start with a prayer for peace. Gomara Siacon a fud na crinne. Gomara Siacon in our Jaili agus in our Jirha. Gonairi Lin Len ar cuid garmacha, Gomwich Buikus Jeev, Je Chudaka, is Spirit Kuvdaka. May peace prevail on earth. May peace prevail in our homes and in our countries. May our missions be accomplished. We thank you, guardian spirits and guardian deities, for peace. As the fever of day calms towards twilight, may all that is strained in us come to ease. We pray for all who suffered violence today. May an unexpected serenity surprise them. For those who risk their lives each day for peace, may their hearts glimpse providence at the heart of history. For those who make riches from violence and war, might hear in their dreams the cries of the lost. That we might see through our fear of each other a new vision to heal our fatal attraction to aggression. That those who enjoy the privilege of peace might not forget their tormented brothers and sisters. That the wolf might lie down with the lamb, that our swords be beaten into plowshares, and no hurt or harm be done anywhere along the holy mountain, with thanks to John O'Donoghue. So let me see where you're all from. So Tipperary, Ballina, Killaloe, Germany, lovely. Winter asked Calgary. It's actually 10 degrees. I was out walking a while ago and 10 degrees, that's Celsius, which is just beautiful. So it is mild. It was colder a few other days. We had a frost a few days ago, but it's quite mild now. New Zealand, Hertfordshire, just lovely to see you all. Also so welcome. Alberta, Canada, and I assume it's cold there, in Berlin. Athens, lovely. Just lovely to see you all. So, a chilly Merseyside, I bet it's damp. Anyway, Belgium, great. So we are going to the UK today. Somebody in Warwickshire, West Sussex, brilliant. We are going to Manchester. And my guest this evening is Dúin Huda. Dúin, you're very, very welcome.
Hiya.
So tell us, I know you're in Manchester, but we have viewers from all over. So tell us what, it's minus 10 someplace else in the world. What is it like in Manchester? I know it is the highest rainfall of a city in England. Am I right?
Yeah, Manchester does rain a lot. It's great. It rains whenever it wants to, which is even better. Manchester does what it wants to. But what is it like weather-wise in Manchester? You know what? So this morning, it felt like real kind of deep winter. So I've got 2 whippets, took them out walking, all of the grass, all of the hawthorn with like bits of its leaves there, but most of it gone, berries still on there. Everything was covered in this frost. Everything was covered in this frost, which is weird. Like, so my name means hoarfrost. So it's not quite rhyme. Yeah, it's not quite rhyme, but it means hoarfrost. It's the hoarfrost that you find right at the very, very tip of a mountain. And so maybe that's why I like it so much. I love that crisp air where you can just see when the sunlight hits it, you can just see all of that water vapor coming out off of the, the leaves and the grass. And it looks like smoke inside it, but really it's just crystallizing just as it rises. I love it. I love it.
So I'm fascinated. So Dúin means hoarfrost. So why do they call you that?
Dúin. So Dúin means that hoarfrost, but it really, in Bengali, it means that bit that you find right at the very tip of a mountain. And my mum, who named me and my sibling, so she loved the snow.
You have frozen there on me. Let's hope my internet's good.
I mean, is it mine?
Yeah, I think you did. You froze there. So you were saying your mother loved?
Yeah, snow. She just loves snow of all different types. And obviously in Bangladesh, they don't often get all the different types of snow that we get in this country. And so me and my sibling are named 2 different types of snow. Me, I'm the frost that appears there. and my sibling is the kind of snow that falls. It's the snowfall that you get. Yeah.
Wow.
Yeah.
Two siblings. And what's your sibling's name?
Tushar. Tushar.
Dushar. And
Tushar, yeah.
so it's Duhan and Dushar. Oh, that's fascinating.
Yeah.
Wow. So I'm now intrigued because you mentioned Bangladesh, and I take it your parents lived at the bottom of the mountain or on the mountainside, or
My mum originally came from India, so she was born in Murshidabad, which is in Bengal, and then
okay,
in partition, they had to move across, and she was, essentially she was born in that crossover year to 2 year period where partition was happening. And there's lots of stories and fables that are attached to her birth, her origin story, and all of that. But then they ended up in Dhaka, which is the capital. But at that time, it was a different Dhaka. Now it's known as Puran Dhaka, which is old Dhaka. Yeah.
hey,
And so my dad came from a village in a place called Nushingdi. It's a district called Nushingdi, and he came from a village there. So they were all village people, not in the kind of YMCA way, but just in a kind of living in a village way.
wow. And so, what brought them to Britain?
Well, that's a story. So my dad was one of in the village. You learn very early who does what. Are you someone that works with your hands? Are you someone with the animals? Are you someone with the land? Are you someone with the lake that they had at the time? Are you of the people? Are you slightly odd, or is it all up here? Are you smart? And in terms of like bookwork, and the nearest school to them was probably about 10 miles away. So he used to like walk 10 miles back and forth, and then also do the work back in the village. And so they knew really quickly that he was good at books, and he loved to read, and he loved to like swallow all that stuff. So they sent him with a little bit of money. They sent him to Dhaka, and they said, listen, look, just here, you got this money, go, you meet your relatives, distant relatives, and go make your way. And back then there were no, we're talking like, this is like 1948, so just around the time of partition. He's 10 years old, he's in the middle of Dhaka, and he's like with a bit of money in his pocket, and that's it. But yeah, he learned some hard lessons very early on about who will steal what, where, and why. But he managed to make it through, got to university, did university, and then there was this thing, I don't know if you are aware, but there was this drive to get people over to England for work. So in the 60s, him and a few people came over because they were promised accommodation, factory work, earn the money, send it out, do whatever. So it was him and a few people that were living in one room because that's what was given to them, 3 or 4 men living in one room. And they used to work in the factories. And very quickly, he realized he needed to get married. So, and I'll tell you this, and I think people listening are probably going to love this because people who are in OBOD, love a bit of the mystical and the fantastical, don't they? So all the while, my mum is like living this completely different life. That's a story for another time, but she was not allowed to go to school in certain bits. When she was doing well at school, they were like, no, you have to stay home. You have to stay home and you have to do this work and do that work. So at night time, she would take her older brother's books and study. And then it was mandatory that all students go and do their exams for their what's known as like intermediate and hires, even if they weren't going to school. And if they didn't turn up, the parents were like really badly looked like at, why aren't you turning up? Where's your kid? What's going on? So she went to the exams and they were like, you're not going to pass. You're absolutely not going to pass. Like, you've not been to school. So she'd absolutely aced the exams, didn't she? Because she's been studying in secret. And they realized, oh, we've got more on our hands than we thought. This person is very smart and they will, get around us. So they were even harder on her. So then by the time 1968 happened, my dad put the word out that he needed a wife, and all the while my mum didn't know who this person was, didn't know anything about them, and she's talking to her friends at school, and they're like, "What are you going to do? How are you going to get out?" And she's like, "Don't worry about it. My husband is in London, and my husband is going to be a barrister." And so when he was studying, finishing his studies to be like to get his LLB, and he came over. He met his parents met my mum's parents, and then they met finally. And she came through to him, and she looked at him, and first thing she said was, "So this is the hand that's going to put soil on my grave, is it?" Just straight like that. And she said, "What do you do?" And he's like, "Well, I'm studying law in London." And she was like, "Okay, done." And that was it. She said yes. And so in 1969, she came over to the UK, not being able to speak a lick of English, got a job as a lab technician because she was a botanist. So she got a job as a lab technician in a London school. And then 1970, my sibling was born. And then 1980, I was born. That's it. Yeah.
What a story.
Yeah.
Subversive studying and against all odds, and the prejudice against women in education and all that stuff.
Yep.
It's an old one.
Yeah.
And just to do that and have it recognized and then get an education. And so your parents, were they happy? I'm always intrigued with made matches, you see, because kind of.
I mean, so define happy. Define happy. Like, as in, no, seriously. So I know, because happiness is different to different people.
Were they good friends? Did they like each other? Did they enjoy each other's company? Were they best friends? I mean, that would be my thing about a spouse.
In the best way possible, in the way that only God could create, they were at sometimes arch enemies. They were at times so distant you could have a universe between them, but they knew each other intimately, so inside out. And they, in some ways, and this is something that I think I understand that I don't think many other people understand, they looked after each other in a way that nobody else could. And I'm not talking about care, I'm not talking about survival, I'm talking about being seen. My mum was one of the only people that my dad would listen to, because he was like, she literally always speaks the truth. When she says something, it happens. And my mum was like, he's an idiot, but he absolutely loves you so deeply. Like, you can't say that he doesn't. And that was really hard for me to listen to. That was really hard for me to hear and accept, because sometimes love doesn't appear in the way that you want it to, does it? But yeah, so were they happy at times?
It's really interesting. You're describing, the complexity of an intimate relationship, because so often we get a superficial notion, you're sexually attracted to each other, you're very affectionate, and you live happily ever after. And yet there's that seeing each other, having each other's back in a complex, mysterious way.
Yeah.
That it's just a lovely description of a complex relationship. But rather than it being black and white, they hate each other and they fought, to actually be able to spot and identify the complex threads between the two of them. It's quite beautiful. Alan says, Duhan, your parents sound like strong, wonderful people. Happiness or not, strong, reloaded, never straightforward. Nimi says, your parents sound filled with life's passions. Then comment on your mother knows her own mind, stuff of legend. Between the study and meeting her partner, that's a woman of determination and focus.
Oh, yeah.
Gabriella has a question. Were they a team?
Were they a team? There were some things that they were definitely united on. I think if you were a Bengali on the border of East London in the 60s, you had to be a team. And they were a team out of choice, because they weren't just a team against
Mm.
life, they also became very together and insular. You know, when things got too tough for one or the other, they said, but they're like, just leave it. Everything that we need is within our four walls if we need it.
Wow.
Yeah, it was that. So yeah, I think they were a team. And actually, do you know what's funny? Thanks. Who asked that question?
I will say, Gabriella.
Gabriella, thank you so much, because what I've just realized now is that sometimes within a family, you think that the family has to be a team altogether, right? And actually, they were a team even when their children disappointed them and were against them at some time. You know, I'd love to say, and I think I'm probably being a bit harsh on myself, that I was ever against them, but I definitely was a problem to them at times. You know, I'm a gay man. I've been around the houses. Like I've had a very colourful life, but I think there were some instances that I'd say my sister really challenged the core of what it is to be a family unit, um, and not for superficial reasons, but for real deep reasons,
Mhm.
that challenged them. Like, as why did we do all of this? Like, why do we even exist? You know. But they really were there for each other, and right up until the point where my dad was, towards the end of my mum's life, my dad was registered blind. He couldn't drive, and he
Okay.
had dementia, and my mum was his main carer. You know, I was. Can I swear on this?
Of course you can.
Okay, I was a dickhead, right? I did not. I was coming up to the age of 30. I should have been more mature than I was, but I wasn't. And I remember at times dad telling me what was going on and needing to go visit mum in hospital between two sets. And he was getting a cab, and I didn't really clock how difficult that was for him at that time, you know. Um, I mean, I clocked when he said, I need to go and see her and I can't keep doing this because it's dangerous for me. And I was like, okay, great, fine, we'll just sort it out. I'll help. That's fine. But I didn't, I don't think I appreciated it until this time when Gabriella answered that question. Like, he was putting his life in trouble for her. So thanks, Gabriella.
It's wonderful having conversations, how new insights appear because someone has asked a naive question, and I don't mean naive in a derogatory sense, but questions because they don't know
Yeah.
your relationship.
Yeah.
And is your father still here, or has he passed as well?
No, he died 2 years ago. So
Oh,
he died. Thankfully, he missed the genocide, which is fine. So thankfully, he missed everything that were. I mean, there were other genocides going on before he died, but like, um, thankfully, he missed all of that stuff, because I think that would have been very upsetting for him to see what was going on, not just in the world, but for us, you know, in this country. And yeah, where he died 2 years ago, so he died 12 years after mum died.
okay.
Yeah.
Of course, she had been his carer, so that was really hard to be, you know, what was it, legally blind and actually blind, but
Yeah.
without the carer who had your back, etc., taking care. So,
He,
how did he take care of himself?
he didn't. I did. So for ages, so I lived in Manchester, and for ages I was traveling backwards and forwards every couple of weeks, to stock up his fridge. And at first it wasn't great, you know, because I thought he could do more than he was actually doing. You know, he was still able to go up and down the stairs at that point, and there was quick succession, probably in the first 3 or 4 years after mom died. Yeah, it was three and a bit years, um, where he really found himself in trouble. He was in hospital, you know, at least once a year. There was a brain hemorrhage that happened, you know, and he really just, he wasn't looking after himself, but not in a kind of depressed way. He just didn't know how anymore. And if you helped him to see the purpose of his life, then he would figure out what to do. Um, but that quickly declined. And then 2014, I was writing a show for, well, not writing a show, sorry, writing a spoken word piece for the Royal Exchange up in Manchester. And Dad was really struggling at the time, and they wanted to write it about partition, and they had various artists commissioned for it. And I wrote a piece called Afterthought because it was about Dad. And everybody wants to know about partition. Oh, how bad was it? You know, survivors of partition, you know, what really happened? It was very sensationalized, but actually the legacy is people like my dad have lost his mum. He doesn't give a toss about what happened really at that point. He can tell you lots of stories, but he did not care about that as much as he cared about his wife that was no longer there. And that's what I wrote about, you know, because that's the legacy of partition for me. But yeah, so then thankfully, due to the pandemic, just as it was starting to get too bad, and we were thinking we need to really move him up to Manchester, the pandemic happened. So John and I just went down and bundled him in the back of a van and brought him up, and then he lived with us until he died.
How did he reconcile himself to the fact that you're gay and married to a non-Bengali, non-Muslim English man?
Yes, well, I mean, I tell you, food really helps, right? So the minute that he realized that John could actually cook certain dishes that were his favorite, like, you know, fried aubergines with some moshla on it was great. And the minute he realized that John could do that, he was like, oh John, how are you today? What do you think you're making, you know? So and they really developed their own relationship. That's what was lovely about it. So Dad had real difficulty in his life making friends with men just for the sake of being friends. You know, there always had to be a transaction. And I think on some level, I don't think John had that with an older man. Like with an elder, he'd not had a friendship of its own accord, you know. And so they had that. And I remember watching it happen while they were here and watching it grow and going, oh, this has nothing to do with me. This is all you two. You know, I was literally I just happened to be in the right place at the right time. But this is all them. The relationship building was just them. The comfort that John gave him in certain moments, the wisdom that Dad gave him in certain moments, that's just unique to them. And that is priceless to me. But the time that really did it, Dad hated the idea of me being gay up until the point gay marriage was legalized. And he literally looked at me that day and he said, so gay marriage is legal, is it? And I was like, yeah. And he was like, yeah. And after that, he was fine with it. He wasn't that bad. It was just a legal thing. It wasn't anything else.
Oh, wow.
Yeah.
Of course, I imagine parents worry when their kids are not following the normal social norms because they worry for their safety. They worry because of the prejudice. You know, we want you to fit in so then you can be safe.
Yeah.
But if you're an outlier, an outlier, whatever that is, that's scary for parents. It's like we want to keep our kids safe. It's really interesting that was a legal issue for him. But once it was legal, then you were not going to be arrested or whatever.
This is it. You weren't an outcast from society. You know, that was the thing. It was for him being a barrister, as soon as the law had said gay marriage is legal and gay marriage is legal, it's not a civil partnership, gay marriage is legal. As soon as the law said that, he was like, well, I have to uphold the law. This is where I am. I have these values. This is what this is. So, yeah. And
it's interesting because many non-lawyers would not want to uphold the law, that still keep their biases and prejudices or whatever. But being the lawyer, I had to honor that. It's really, really interesting.
Yeah.
Brilliant, brilliant, brilliant. So, did your parents ever go back to Bangladesh? I mean, were you brought there? Do you have any connection with?
Yeah. So I went in 1984, 1989, and then I went in 2022. And I'm really glad I did because, you know, that thing that you have, like, I'm sure other people in this chat will understand this. Sometimes you just know I have to do this thing now. And you don't know why, but you know why for you. You just don't know why in terms of what might happen if you don't,
Yeah.
right? And so in 2022, I'd become a consultant. I was like, great. When am I going to start my substantive post? And a mentor at the time, Sarah, she said, do you know what? If you're thinking about taking 2 months off, take 3. You can take 3 before you start. Just take that 3 months and just do something that you wouldn't normally have done. And I said to John, I was like, I'm going to go to Bangladesh. And he was like, what are you doing? And so I told Dad, I was like, Dad, I'm going to go to Bangladesh. And he was like, what are you doing? Like, what are you doing? Because he was like, they might hurt you, not because of my sexuality, but because families are weird, aren't they? Like, so they have a very warped idea of what we live in this country. They think that and comparatively, probably in some respects, but they think
Very
I'm
wealthy.
exactly living in a mansion. I've got no problems. I must have servants. I'm so much better off than them that they should be able to just demand and take.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah,
I've come
yeah, yeah,
across that
yeah,
many
yeah.
times. Yeah, yeah.
And that's not all the family. That's just some of them. And Dad was worried about some of them, and we do come from people that have had to do some awful things in order to not just
Survived.
survive, not just survive, but some people they've just done some awful things because we don't know why. Maybe they were just awful people, you know. But but yeah, so I said to Dad, I was like, John's going to come with me, and he was like, great. If he goes with you, they won't touch you. And I had absolutely no idea where these people were or anything, because after 1989, my parents had only kept in contact with the families back in Bangladesh because they had land over there.
Okay.
Yeah, but then essentially that land's been stolen by members of the family, or somehow. I don't really know how, but um, we think that it got sold and then the money's gone somewhere, but we don't know where that money's gone. And to be honest, it's all part of the story, isn't it? But they didn't want to go back because they realized it was too much stress for them. They'd always had in their head that on that land they would build a house, and that
Yeah.
they would go back and they would retire there, and that I would go back with my family because this is when they didn't know I was gay, that I would go back with my family because I always wanted to go back. And that with my family, I would have some form of a medical practice there, and I would have half medical practice, half school, because that's what I wanted to do. If you train people to do what they love doing, and that's everyone, then everybody benefits, right? That you just need to know what you love doing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So when you did go back, how was it with John?
Interesting. Like, I'd say interesting in the sense of so we landed, we got off in Dhaka, and it was like being home. It's like I'd never left.
Great.
I looked around and I was surrounded by people, and because I grew up hearing Bengali, I don't translate it in my head. I can't speak Bengali very well, but I don't translate it in my head. It's just I understand it,
Yeah.
And so I was surrounded by people speaking this language, and I kept forgetting to say to John what they were saying because I just assumed that he could just also understand, because why wouldn't you? And when we were there, we were sort of a bit on guard. We didn't know what we were going to expect. We were trying not to hold hands because we didn't know what was going on. And as we were walking down the street, these 2 women, Romana and Sheena, who were Hijra, started approaching us.
Who
It
were
was
what?
Hijra. They're like eunuchs, like transgender women.
Go away. Go on.
Yeah. So, and I'd been looking up like queer culture in Dhaka before I went, because I'm like, well, what is that? Like, what am I walking into? And it's very different. It's like there are houses where people do rather than being on the streets and rather than being outcast, if you're transgender, you can get to live in safety in a house. with other transgender people. And some of it, unfortunately, is mixed with sex work sometimes, out of necessity, because, how do you get a job and what have you? And what was funny was meeting, I think, was it Sheena or Rumana that we met first? I can't remember, but I think it might have been Rumana. And it was so weird because we're walking up and down the street, and I had my little pack of jalmuri, which is this like puff rice thing, and John's there. And literally, there's a point where we were going past a cart that was also selling jalmuri, and out of the corner of my eye, I can see this woman. And I looked, and rather than stare, I just looked, and then and she wasn't looking at me. And I walked past, and when you can just feel a vibe, there's just a vibe there, right?
Yeah.
And the next thing I know, I'm walking down the street and I can hear her talking to another man, and she's following this other man. And he was about to like give her a bit of aggro, but she pulled back and she left him alone. And we were at a crossings, and I just turned around and I just stared at her, because I was like, I want you to know that I'm your brother. Like, we're of the same family, right? And so then she just caught my eye, and then she came up and she started talking to me. And I was like, what's going on? Like, what do you need? Blah, blah, blah. And I gave her a little bit of money because she was telling me about all the stuff that I've just told you about, the houses and everything like that. And I'm like, listen, look, this is what I've got with me now. Have this. It was the equivalent of like basically a week's worth of a salary, but the exchange rate is so different. So I said, have this for now. And then, I don't know if I'm ever going to see you again, but listen, just know that you have brothers and sisters and siblings everywhere, right? Like, I'm glad to have met you. And John's there, and he's like, what is she saying? What's going on? And, we're part translating. Anyway, the following day, we met Ramona and Sheena. We met both of them together, and we were talking. And it was like, anyone that's on this call that is queer will understand. It was literally like I was bringing my boyfriend home to the family, right? Because they were like, girl, he is fine. Like, you've got yourself a good one there. And they were telling me all of this in Bengali about John. And they were like, you've got a really good boyfriend. And I was like, Shami, like, he's my husband. And they were like, oh, because the idea that we could be married and open in public was insane to them. And something just shifted in them. They were like, it is possible. This is my kin, that somewhere he is married someone who is 6'4", buff, like, looking at this guy, they're like, wow, like, he got him. Wow, okay, cool. So there's something for everyone, right? And this is cool. And I've that was nice. And we were walking and talking, and the police tried to give them some nonsense, and I was just like, piss off, they're with me, it's fine. And that was it.
It's a beautiful story. Beautiful story. How did your relatives take to you?
They are joyous. They are joyous. They were fine with me and John, actually. They were like asking John loads of questions. John ended up eating with his hands. He ended up eating at the family table, the table that my dad grew up eating at. Like, why, so when I turned up, they were like, I cannot believe it's you. Well, you didn't even tell us you were coming. What's going on? I just turned up at this village because I just happened to track them down, and one of my cousins gave me a bit of help, and I said, shh, don't tell them. But yeah, we just turned up, and I really wish I could go back. I really wish I could go back right now, but my dad promised me, he made me promise that I wouldn't tell them that he died. Before he died, I was like, what, do you want me to tell them? What do you want me to tell them? And he was like, don't tell them, you can't tell them. So I haven't done that.
It's a strange request. Do you know why he asked that?
I have no idea. I have no idea. It will be because he will be wanting to protect me somehow. And I'm not sure. Yeah, I'm not sure exactly the reason, but that's what I can put it down to.
Wow.
Yeah, I just, dad was both a source of danger and a source of protection for me a lot of the time, and I think that what there are so many people in that family, in that village that's still there. They're his brothers, and they're all different people. And then his sisters and his nieces, nephews, his grandnieces, nephews, whatever you call them. And they're all different. They're all different people. And some of them would be really upset to know that they never met him. Some of them would be really upset to know that they couldn't say goodbye physically. So I really wish that in their dreams they already know, and I wish that they are able to find peace with that, because
Yeah.
that's shit. Yeah.
Wow. It's a fascinating story. My goodness. So, I mean, talk about a rich background story. And I just want to get on to you. You mentioned you're a consultant. So, and get medicine out of the way and then get back to Druider. So, what we'd say in Ireland, what class of a doctor are you?
Oh, so you know already, don't you? Otherwise, because
I,
normally, what do you not
no,
know?
I know you did medicine. I know you're on the edge. So,
Love
I didn't
it.
realize you were. I didn't realize you were a consultant. So, consulting at the edge of what is my question?
Okay, great. Oh no. Oh yeah. Okay, fine. So, because I feel like you might know already, but normally what I do is I ask people to guess, because I just think that it's really fun when people guess like what you do. But I do intensive care.
Okay.
Yep, I do intensive care and sleep medicine. Yeah, those two.
Okay, because when we had our conversation when we met in Glastonbury,
Yeah.
it was like, oh, you're not a normal, whatever a normal doctor is. You know what I mean? You're not pharma oriented. You're on the edge.
Yeah.
So, how do you marry that with intensive care medicine?
It's been hard. It's been hard because for anyone that knows, or anyone that's involved in the intensive care medicine field, please don't take offense to what I'm going to say, but intensivists on the whole are very, the majority of people are like, we need evidence. We need to have consensus about practice. We have a bunch of tools. Look at all these toys that we've got that we can do things with. And also, we deal with the most critically ill patients. So, therefore, we are really important and we do all these really important things. And centering patients in all of that is an idea and a hope a lot of the time. And it's an aspiration. But I don't see it in that way. Like, I think one of the first conversations that we had when we met at the gathering last year, um, it I think I remember saying to you that for me, all illness that exists in our bodies, we see it as a manifestation of experiences, or our genetics, how it's brought itself forward. And some things are triggered by the environment, some things are made by the environment. But for me, there's another aspect to that, and that is everything's in constant balance, or trying,
Mm-hmm.
and everything's recycling. So when you see someone who, for example, let's take something like uh, psychosis secondary to Lewy body dementia, right? Okay, so this is an organic illness that's creating these hallucinations and these strange behavior in people and these strange movements. But for me, that is that person is giving that back to the environment, right, that they are in. Knowingly or unknowingly, my theory is that we're all doing that because the environment needs it for some form of change. So we're in constant communication backwards and forwards. So where you see like this epidemic of obesity, we're my simplistic theory, and I'm not saying this is true for everyone, but my simplistic theory is this epidemic of obesity is because we're all storing, because the environment knows that we need to have a change, and there will be a change, and there will be scarcity, and the land itself is becoming more and more scarce. So we are providing this storage for later, so that when we die, we decompose. That body's going to go somewhere, isn't it? And that just goes straight back in.
So we're giving back to the land with our bodies, with
We
our obese bodies. That's what you're saying.
ideally, and this is the thing. Like, I just at the sleep medicine conference, I heard this amazing talk about sleep.
Wow.
Yeah, I heard this amazing talk about sleep from essentially the progenitor of sleep medicine in the in Western world, and he gave this talk about sleep and life on Earth, and he was talking about the circadian rhythm and about why we need light and why we need sleep. Like, nobody's answered the question yet why we need sleep, but we know that we must need it for some reason, because otherwise, what an evolutionary fuck up, right? Like, it's a total evolutionary fuck up if we don't need it. And so I asked him at the end of the lecture, when he's told us about the great oxygen shift and cyanobacteria, and he's told us all about how different species respond with sleep and how they respond to light, and how many mammals and how many fish just don't sleep for weeks after they give birth. He told me why dolphins are mean, because I mean, dolphins just don't get REM sleep ever, really, and they're just mean because of that. But also all those creatures that are on the depths of the ocean that don't get any of our perceived light, they still have a circadian rhythm, right? They still have it. And the theory that they have, because they're thinking with like a human brain, is that all of the byproducts of sleep, melatonin in its various forms, trickle down through excretion, and then that's ingested, and that's what happens. So I asked him, I shook his hand and I said, I just want to ask you a question. It's just when nobody else is listening, so they don't think I'm mad. If this is the case, why does the earth need melatonin? And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, well, we all die, don't we? We are literally producing it. Maybe the reason why we all sleep is because the world needs it. The world needs us to produce all this stuff, because when we die, we give it back. So why does the earth need melatonin? And that's the question. If anybody online knows the answer to that, I can figure it out. But why these proteins that we make, these things, how they break down, why does the earth need that back? Like, what do the trees need out of it? Like, what do that's where my brain goes with it. I'm like,
Well, I'm just fascinated by this. So skinny people are only restoring bone meal to the earth.
This is not true.
And the bodybuilders, okay, they'll hand the protein, and then the obese people is the fat that's needed. I'm just fascinated as a theory. So that, and of course, then it behoves us to look after our bodies.
Yes.
As in, to have as healthy a body in terms of as clean a body as we can, so that we are. Now, have you met Christopher Hughes?
Yeah, well, only not in person, but like I've seen him on stage doing his thing.
Okay, well, he's speaking at the Winter Gathering, and our theme is death. And so a guest a few weeks back, Chris Cooper Hayes, they're working together, and they're sorry, I have to put this up. Ricky is a terrible distraction to me.
Yes, exactly, Ricky. Exactly.
I'm not overweight. I'm magnanimous and generous to the earth. I sorry, it flashed up, and I have to. So anyway, talking about terramation, they are getting it sanctioned in the UK, or maybe in Wales, starting, where bodies are composted.
Yeah,
and I just find that is fascinating, that then the family get the compost after 2 months, the composted body, and they can put it on the land. And what a wonderful way of dealing with our bodies.
Absolutely.
I know my stepson died in 2007, and we were he was looking after with a group of eco warriors, 9 ladies, Stone Circle in Derbyshire. And we were looking for a place for a green burial. At the time, they were hard to find in the UK. We found one in Scotland. But a number of them, this one didn't, they had a stipulation that if you've had chemotherapy, for example, we're not going to accept your body. And because that's putting chemicals in the earth. And I thought,
that's so weird. Try the rivers.
well, Yeah. So I just thought that was a load of nonsense.
Yeah,
And again, my body is pure. And it's like, well, you don't know.
yeah,
You don't know what plastic. And when you think of all of us, if this theory is that we've microplastics in our blood and our breast milk and our
yeah,
everything else, then none of us is pure and clean. But I just love that. So was it last year? No, 2 winters ago. The theme for the Winter Gathering discussions was animism. And we had Graham Harvey and we had Gordon McClellan and Lucy Jones talking about animism. And this thing about, we're all ensouled beings. With ensouled beings, parasites, bugs, whatever it is, fungi,
yeah,
inside us, eating off us. And we eat ensouled beings.
yeah,
If we have an animistic world where everything has a soul, and then that feeds us and the ensouled beings within us. So
yeah,
it allows us that we can eat everything with respect, because we too, whatever we're eating is feeding the things that are eating off us, and that
yeah.
beautiful balance. And I thought, what a lovely way of engaging with the world.
Yes.
And then we don't have to be guilty about walking on grass, or there isn't a hierarchy, are animals more
No, yeah.
important than plants and all of that stuff. And I thought it was just so beautiful.
And this is exactly how I think about not just medicine, but how I think about our existence. And I think I'm going to paraphrase it really badly, but Angharad Wynn did a live thing a couple of weeks ago,
Who
and
was this?
so Angharad Wynn, she's
Oh, yes.
from
Well,
yeah, from the Brythonic tradition down in Wales, and she said we need to stop thinking about ourselves as apex predators and start thinking of
yes.
ourselves as being keepers within this web of life. And I loved that. I'm sure I paraphrased that incorrectly, but I love because it articulated how I intrinsically see my place on earth, because and this is as a thing Islamically, this is what we're told in the Quran, don't make mischief on the planet, don't take from the earth more than you need, give back, look after the land, look after the plants, like pay respect to everything that is created, because you are on that level, and it's funny you talk about eco burials. My first Islamic funeral was my mum's,
Okay.
and I mean, that was a whirlwind, but one of the most beautiful surprises, because it was done by these amazing people that run the Gardens of Peace down in Ilford or Hainault, and the most beautiful surprise was my dad was on a little chair by the burial plot, and he was there and he wasn't sure what was going on. And traditionally in Islam, like you are wrapped up in a cotton shroud, so something that is easily biodegradable. You're wrapped up in that, and there is no coffin.
Yeah.
And so we were all starting to carry mum, and you have to carry the body with as if it's like a feather, because the belief in Islam is that, and we know this now from science, but the belief in Islam is that after you die, the body feels everything 1,000 times more. And it's not the person that feels it, but the nervous system. For 45 minutes after death, the nervous system is a bit upregulated in some respects, the autonomic one anyway. But so they said to me, because I wanted to carry my mum there, and they said, no, you have to come over here. And they said, you have to get in there. And I'm like, you what? They were pointing to me to get in the grave, because I had to climb down and I had to basically catch my mum and lay her down on the ground and make sure that her face was facing Mecca. And that was, at the time, I was like, what the hell? But also, you're just not conscious of it. You're just doing what you need to do. And I can still now, this is the third time I've said the story and I can feel it. So for ages, while my dad was alive, I couldn't do this. But now that I'm telling the story, I can feel my mum's cheek on my hand when I say it,
Oh.
because I can remember what it felt like, and this is part of the grieving process. And in terms of eco burial, like they say, you have to have headroom enough for the body to be able to sit up in the grave, and then there's a plank over there, and then soil is placed on top. Now, anybody that knows anything knows that in order to speed up decomposition, you need a certain degree of oxygen and you need a certain degree of gases in there. It is the quickest way to decompose and go back into the ground. It's the best conditions because it's warm, it's moist, loads of air is there. And I just think that's beautiful. Like, I think it's great. Yeah. Anyway.
Wow, wow, wow. That's just, wow. It's beautiful to be able to put your mother in the grave.
Yeah.
I know when Howard, my husband, died 10 years ago, 10 and a half years ago, he died here, in the house. I laid him out with my sister, who's also a nurse, and a friend, Koch, who's a member of the order. And then I had, when the undertaker came to take him away for a while, they said, would you like to leave? I said, no. What? I said, I laid him out. I'm putting him in the coffin with you, which we did. And then we had a willow coffin and we lined it with flowers. And then I kept him home. I waked him for 5 days, which is obviously very different to Islam, but it's also long for Ireland. Yeah. But I wanted him at home because we had a lot of people from the UK coming over. And the kids dug the grave. And my children were 16 and 13 at the time. And I thought sometimes when I've been at funerals, and I've been at many funerals, often there's an outpouring of grief as the coffin is being lowered into the ground. And I thought that would be a really hard time for me. And it wasn't. We laid the coffin in and I thought, he's going home. I'm seeing him home. Yeah. And we balanced the straw because with the willow coffin, you put straw on top first before the soil. Nice. And then they gathered their straw and then they put it on. And then everybody filled in the grave. Everybody, which normally now in rural Ireland, the men would have done it. Yeah. Everybody did it. And if it's in Dublin, everything is sanitized. You just put a cover over the grave and people walk away. So they're spared the reality of what a burial is. And we chanted, deep into the earth I go.
Yeah.
And I learned that, with an obod, and it was just beautiful. So to be able to offer that, and what's the last thing you did for your mother as you laid her in her grave? You felt her cheek on your hand. What a joy. When so many people who've had sudden deaths or they've never gotten to see the body. In Ireland, seeing the body is very, very important. Or they've had accidents or whatever it is. That the last thing you can do, that gift that you receive and the gift that you give to her is quite beautiful.
I think it's really, but what I was touched by what you said was that with the willow coffin and laying him out for longer than is necessary and being able to do things slightly differently, I think it touches me because it's what I wish for everyone. When we lose someone that we love, we're really scared. A lot of people are scared because they don't want to get it wrong for the person that they love. And so subconsciously or consciously, we look to other people to tell us what to do. But I think it's really beautiful when people remember that they are the loved one of this person who's gone, so they know best. What to do.
But there's also having the conversation.
Yes.
And I know with Howard, from the time we met, we talked about death. So your mother's response to your father, so you're the one that's going to put the soil in my grave. Yeah. There's a joke about an Irish proposal, which would be, how do you want to be buried with my people? Or how would you like, would you like to be buried with my people? Something like that.
Excellent.
Like an Irishman's proposal. And it's said in a joking way. But we talked about it, what we wanted. Now, it changed over the years. We weren't Druids at the time. And so when we had the blessing that Howard had cancer and that he was well until he wasn't, so we had discussed everything. Who was going to do what kind of a ceremony. We asked Paul and Coach Oban members a year before he died, will you do the funeral? So they were ready. We didn't know when that would be. So there was no fear, and we did exactly what he got the death he wanted. Didn't want a death, but the best possible outcome. And I think it's about having that conversation. And you're right, people want to know. I did a funeral for a friend recently, and it was a Druidic one. Her in-laws were disgusted, not very, very happy with it at all. When she contacted me about 3 months before she died, she said, I have 3 months will you do the funeral? And I said, have you spoken to your family? I have, and my husband is happy with it. The outlaws weren't so happy. But I had, I went to see her before she died, and then a week later she passed, and then I went to see the family again. And we had already discussed what she wanted, and I discussed it with the kids. And so there were people not very happy with it, but the people who didn't matter to her were the ones who weren't happy with it. But the people who did, like her children, each of them had a role in the ceremony. And that is what's important. And they knew their mother, he knew her husband knew what she wanted. And they were determined that that's what she was going to have.
You're totally right.
What the culture says or the society says.
Yeah. You're totally right. Like, I think if you've had the conversations and then you know, don't you? And I think it's really important to break tradition from time to time to make new tradition.
You're right. And I do think at times of grief, people will go for an off the peg funeral according to whatever the culture is around you, because you're too grief stricken. I was lucky that we had time and had taken the time to discuss it, because I've known people who regret not having done something, but because they were so stuck with grief, they didn't do it. Aisling Kiernan, good Irish name. When we waked my dad here at home, we told stories around his open coffin, and the children put drawings and notes in with him to take to the other world, and the littlest ones jumped up high to see in.
I love that.
And Ricky says, if only funeral and memorial coordinator was more a mainstream job and folk were more able to make advanced plans. Absolutely. It's we need to be able to do it. So Owen, this is a long one, so I'm going to put it on the screen. So very enjoying this conversation. In many animistic cycles, the sense as I understand it and the sharing it is to move through. The idea of pure bodies is a puzzle to me. Unless it fell from the sky, we are all forged from the earth and return to it in many, many ways. The sacredness of the act of contact, especially by loving, caring acts, is so intimate and raw. The greeting of those that go on in ritual act and spiritual exchange is something I don't have words for, but think.
Yeah.
It's not to be afraid. So, and interesting that Ricky said about, what do you call him? The Druid, William Price, got cremation legalized in Britain. And so he says, the Druid, Dr. William Price, got cremation legalized for us. The Druid, Christopher Hughes, aims to do the same with terramation. Like William Price, this is so typical of Ricky. Will Christopher also wear a Druid onesie? Because William did wear a onesie.
I think we should make a petition for that. That would be cool.
Oh my goodness! Then we could sell it in the Obod shop. You can order,
maybe a druid Care Bear onesie. That would be cool.
Oh my god!
Anyway,
go on.
No, go on.
A comment from Joanne. Many people don't have a deep encounter with death until they prepare to experience their own. It's unfortunate. I'm lucky, I come from a culture where we're never afraid of death. I did my own death work in my training, and that's fortunate. And I would suggest to anybody, get out there. If there's any opportunity to do some death work, do it.
Yeah. I think it's funny, in the course of this conversation, I've realized that it used to be very clear cut. So for me, I will always want to have a Muslim funeral.
Yes.
And a Muslim burial. Thing is, though, once I'm dead, it's going to be really difficult for people to advocate for that. And once people are dead, all sorts of things happen. I can imagine a situation where my husband may not be allowed to be at the burial if I do get a Muslim burial. I can imagine a situation where women wouldn't be allowed to be there, because actually that's also part of a Muslim burial, unfortunately. At the point at which the body goes in the ground, women aren't there for some stupid reason. But maybe it's just a reason that I just don't understand. I don't know. But also I can imagine a situation where actually maybe people don't want to give me a Muslim burial, because oh, look, he did all this stuff with Druidry. He must be a polytheist, right? He must be this, he must be that.
And that's haram.
Oh, it's haram, but it's also not who I am. Like, so it's the, and these are also the conversations that I think we need to have. And this is probably where maybe some of the solutions come from. You know, I'm not the only one in my position. There are loads of us that walk through this earth, crossing multiple boundaries, you know, breaking the rules because we can't have rules applied to us. It's against nature, right? And I think that the more that people like me open ourselves up to everyone, you know, people that say, actually, this is what Druidry has been for me for ages. Actually, Druidry comes from Gerald Gardner. It comes from this whole thing here. It comes from here. It is. You know, I can tell them about the shamans that exist in Indonesia. I can tell them about the shamans that exist in South Africa. I can tell them about the shamans that exist as nomadic tribes throughout Bangladesh. You know, this is, and that's not even beginning to touch on how all of the stories have traveled right the way through, right the way from Aotearoa, right the way through to, like, you know, the Sami people, right the way through to,
Mm.
you know, the Native Americans. Like, it's just, I think it's in, I think we're at a point now where we will, as different factions, we will all die unless we learn how to respect the death of individualism and become the collective. You know, it's that term, isn't it? It's that spiritual lineage. You know, yeah, yeah,
It's funny, the death of individualism, and I think people, we are discrete individuals within a system that needs to be acknowledged, and a
hmm,
system is only as good as the individuals that make it up. What I love about Obod is that we allow people to express their individuality within an order that allows diversity. And
yeah,
I like to describe it as a salad. So it's not a puree. So we're not all assimilated to be singing out of the one hymn sheet, for the want of a better metaphor,
yeah,
but that each of us has our own textures.
yeah,
All when you think of all the possible ingredients in a salad,
yeah.
it's so diverse, and it allows for that magic. And I think if we can come to a world that says you can have, it would be lovely, a Muslim burial with a druidic element, if that is what you wanted. I mean, and I'm curious of getting to, how do you weave the two together? Why are you a druid if Islam is so important to you?
Ah.
You know, it's those kind of things, because I imagine there are certain Muslims who go, you're not a real Muslim, you're not a good one because you're contaminating with X, Y, and Z. I'm sure there's some people who think like that.
Oh,
And then
absolutely. Yeah,
there are others fascinated. I was in Morocco for 2 weeks in September on a storytelling residency, exploring with a Moroccan. You met Zuhair.
yeah, yeah, yeah,
Met him, looking at the invisible threads between Amazigh culture, which is pre-Islamic,
yeah.
and Irish culture. And of course, we found them, and there
Yes.
were things that, haram, working with jinn, all of that stuff,
Yeah.
and that's there in the culture, and yet it's not considered, it's not halal, but
But
yes,
but it's
it's there.
but it's in the Quran. It's in the Quran. So there's an entire surah, like, I'm sure it's called Surah Jinn, right? It talks about the fact that there are jinn who are Muslim, you know. So it's not just, and please don't get me wrong. I'm not trying to say everyone's Muslim, right? Because just, different people, different people, different people, right? But we've got, I love the fact that all of these stories have changed and merged over time. Like, I am an Epic of Gilgamesh freak, right? I love that. And as soon as you start really involving yourself and taking yourself there, to ancient Mesopotamia, taking yourself there to talk to Enkidu, talk to Gilgamesh, talk to Inanna, as soon as you start doing that, you realize, oh my God, literally, what Old Testament, what Bible, what? Like, all of this stuff has come from there. And I think what one of the things that I love about weaving So I haven't purposefully woven anything. I don't think you can do that with faith. I don't think you can do that with your own nature. It has to just be given the ingredients and grow or cook. You know what? And my version of the salad is a biryani, right? Okay, so because essentially everyone's got their own spice, their own flavor. There's different ingredients, the rice, the meat, if you eat meat, the other bits, but it has to all cook together to be the final product, right? All of us together, in order for us to really expand Druidry to be its final product or to be the next product, to really be eaten, you know, we kind of have to all cook together with each other. And yeah, I think one of the things that has happened, so I've just finished going through all the bardic material, but I wouldn't say I finished the bardic grade because I'm like a whirlpool. You know, I need all of the stuff and then I need to let it just simmer around for ages in order to let it settle. And the process has really enlightened parts of Islam to me that were hidden before. You know, I could read the Quran but not understand it.
Sorry, repeat that statement again.
I don't know what I just said.
Are you
um,
saying that reading the Gwers has revealed parts of Islam to you that you hadn't been aware of before? Is that what you said?
Kind of. So, you know, when people talk about Arwen and the inspiration that comes with that, and people talk about, you know, Bridget as being this poet, but like the deity of poetry and healing and all this, and they talk about the Koyach as being this person that will transform everything, you know, through these winter months and beat it down. All of this stuff, you know, I knew of Taliesin, who, by the way, I used to call Taliesin all the time in my head for some reason. But I knew of Taliesin before I knew of Merlin or Merlin, and I knew and I had I wrote this to my mentor that I had a very different story of the birth of Taliesin. But I'll get to the point. Basically, the through going through these things and people revealing these, you know, asking me to go through certain meditations or me going through these processes, um, it's really made me go, hang on, hang on, hang on, hang on. How does this work with my truth? Like, what is it? And working from my truth outwards through it all, suddenly bits in the Quran and ways of being a Muslim became so much more full. And do you know what? It's epitomized by coming back from the morning in Avebury at the summer
Mm.
gathering, right? And I want to I hope they don't mind me saying it, but there was someone, I think his name was Tobias. Um, um, we were on the coach on the way back, we were talking about this stuff, and a realization while we were in that while they were doing the ceremony in Avebury. And in the middle of the ceremony, I'm there and I'm holding hands with Mark and I'm holding hands with Jade, these two brilliant people that I met. And in the middle of the ceremony, this dog just turns up and starts running around, and it's like just like going no, 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 and it's like trying to get people's attention. But almost everyone was like, "We're doing the ceremony. We need to focus on the ceremony." But me and Jade, we were like, "But it's a dog, though. Like, there's a dog here." And the dog came and literally like lay at our feet, and we rubbed its belly while we're there. And it's not like we'd separated from the ceremony. We're just in both places because, you know, we're all connected, right?
Mm.
And that's when I realized that in the Quran it talks about this thing like, and I'm sorry if this offends anyone, but we don't worship the sun and the moon because it is also created, same as we are. But all things are subjugated to help each other. right? So in the same way that the sun sets, the moon rises, and the sun sets and rises every single day, the Quran talks about this and it says, look, do you not see how we've it uses the English is the word subjugated, but the Arabic is different. It's not as like forceful as that. But do you not see how we've made these things for you? And that one line, I was like, hang on, what do you mean? And then I looked right the way through all of like creation of life on Earth and time and what happens now. And I'm like, oh yeah, we really couldn't be us without that, could we? Like we actually couldn't be who we are without the sun. And it rises and falls every day until it's told not to, right? And similarly, in the Quran, it talks about the water. It's like, look, do you not see? You have fresh water and you have salt water, and there is a barrier between them. Even though they're connected, we have made a barrier, right? And it's only from there we've given you meats of different flavor in the fresh water and the salt water for you to enjoy, and it's for you to create with your boats and drive through from one to the other and then go back. And that for me is almost identical to the passage of the salmon. This salmon goes all the way down to the salt water, comes all the way back up, and what happens, we have these strong trees as a result of these half dead salmon in the middle of these rivers. And so when I'm like talking to Tobias, and he was like, well, what do you think about this stuff? And I'm like, what I've just realized in Avery is that there is, with Islam, it talks about worship of Allah, and I'm there with that. Like, this is my creator, and that's what I worship. But Islam also asks you to work in deep reverence with everything else and know that you are on the same level as everything else that's been created. And that includes the jinn, that includes these demons, that includes all these things that we view as an enemy. You're on the same flipping level. And that's what the final thing that came about was in one of the meditations that I did. And I'm glad I'm talking to this community, so you'll know these words, you'll know what I mean. One of the meditations that I did, as I traveled down in the midst of this really distant part in the grove, I met this person who introduced themselves first as Morgana, right?
Okay.
And Morgana was there and was trying to persuade me and said, look, I can get rid of all the problems in your life. I can get rid of everything in your life. You just have to give me something. And I'm like, mate, drop the mask, right? Just drop the mask. And Morgana then transformed themselves into Lilith, right? And I say this because Tobias was talking about Lilith. And so if this ever gets through to Tobias, maybe this is of relevance. But Tobias was talking, but Lilith was there, and Lilith was talking about the snakes and like looking at all this stuff. Look at all this stuff. Look at all these illusions that people have bought, and I can give you inclusion because I have made my own inclusion. I can take away all these problems. You just have to give me something. And before, the next bit would be, well, what do you want from me? But actually, instead, I said, listen, look, can we just level? Because at the end of the day, we are more important than either you or I. Allah created you.
Us.
Allah created me, and Allah created us as separate. Allah created us potentially at the moment, apparently as opposites. There is nothing that I can give you that you need. There is nothing that you can give me that I need. But together we are created because Allah needs us. Allah wanted us. And in that moment, Lilith, me, we kind of just broke bread. We weren't actually breaking bread, but there was a peace that happened. There was a sanctity that happened, and there was an egg, that wasn't Lilith's or mine. It's just an egg, and I think that's what I mean by this whole process bringing enlightening stuff to me about Islam, there's a real humility from Islam that has come as a result of going through this work.
Wow.
So I'm really grateful.
I have a question, which is it's from Poppy, and I think it might be worth you clarifying it. And with all due respect, I used to have a fear of Muslims because I thought they hated women and anyone who does not agree with them. Sorry, is that true? Does it include women?
Listen, Poppy, I am like, I'm not laughing out of anything other than like nervousness, but also hopefully you will have heard this whole thing, like where, and you didn't come in the middle of it. If you haven't heard the whole thing, I just want you to know Muslims are like any other creature or human being. Some of them will hate women. Some of them won't. Some of them will hate women at one point in their life and then they'll grow out of it. Others will hate women later on in their life because they will have learned to because of things that women did to them. You know, I think it's really inappropriate and it's a jail for you if you try and put groups of people into boxes in your head, because all that does is it separates you from the world. They're still living their life. Yeah, I hope that helps.
It's funny, Ricky says, my Swiss Calvinist aunt converted to Islam. My German High Catholic mother converted to Islam. If Islam did not include women, how or why were they able to convert? So I think Poppy's question is, they have women, but do they treat them good? Is what her question is.
Okay. So, I mean, it's the same principle, is that humans are humans. You know, humans aren't just their religion. So you will get good humans, bad humans, whatever. But I think it's probably worth me telling you about Aisha. People always talk about this, like, you know, that whole trope, like, oh, Islam supports paedophilia because, you know, the Prophet married like a 9-year-old. It's so taken out of context because that 9-year-old was called Aisha. And yeah, they did get married. She lived with her parents while they were married, and they lived separately until she wanted to leave and go and live with him. But I'll cut a long story short because I think it's really important that, like, if you have these questions, Poppy, go read the hadith, read the seerah, which is the life of the Prophet Muhammad. But more importantly, if you're worried about women, there are loads of resources out there that tell you about the most amazing women in Islam. And it really helped me because I had the same feeling as you. For ages, I was like, oh, I don't know how I feel about this. I'm like, you know, I'm agender myself. I'm not into this whole, like, you know, gender disparity. But when I started learning about these women, it really helped. Aisha, I'll cut to the end of it so that when you read about her, you'll understand why this is so important to me. In the middle of battle, when the Muslims were losing, and the Prophet Muhammad was about to be killed and had already suffered an injury on his arm and was down on the floor. Aisha saw this, ran straight in, picked up a sword, completely got rid of someone else, and was like, I will cut you down. Aisha was the one that, after every revelation of the surah, when the Prophet Muhammad was like, I cannot anymore, like, just had a big, what we call now download, like a transmission from Allah. And Aisha would cover him with a blanket, shut the door, turn around to him and be like, back off. You all just back off until I say ready. It's important for me, I guess, in this instance, and thank you, Poppy, for letting me say this. Women in Islam are scholars, they are warriors, they are legislators, they are imams, they are anything they want to be, because women have things in them, innate to them, that men can't do. Like that's what this is, the wisdom of Allah. It's like the religion is bears fruit from different people at different times. So yeah, yeah,
I think it's interesting because even Poppy's asking, is Aisha male or female? Female. The interesting thing is, and Sean makes or Ricky agreed, but does patriarchy treat women well, regardless of religion? So when you look at any of the the Abrahamic religions,
yeah,
women haven't had a good thing, particularly well treated. And it's the interpretation of
yeah,
these sacred texts. Well, people have always used religion for their own ends and to abuse people with it, regardless of whether it's Islam or Christianity or Judaism.
yeah,
So we're living, so it's the humans. So in terms of the principles or whatever the insights from
yeah.
the higher source, Allah in your case, coming to the Prophet.
Yes. Can I say one more thing? Like,
Yes,
Poppy, from an Islamic perspective, I'll just say this to you. You have nothing to fear as a Muslim, as a female Muslim. There is nothing to fear ever. Bad things still happen. As a Muslim, bad things still happen to me all the time, and I still have days where I'm like, "Oh my God, I can't get out of bed because I'm so worried about stuff." But honestly, Poppy, if you are scared of Islam, you're scared of the wrong thing, because it's not Islam. The joke was never about what would you do if you met Islam or a bear in the woods, right? The joke was never about, you know, was Islam on Epstein's list, right? The joke was never about did Islam go and see Prince Andrew. So, Poppy, you don't need to be scared of men even. You don't need to be scared of anything, because the more you open yourself up and realize that actually you know the difference. You know the difference between something that is dangerous and something that isn't. You won't need to fit in anymore. You'll just actually be able to keep yourself safe, and you'll find other people that are safe too.
well, there's another question from her. Can you explain why they must be covered to the point of killing women because she doesn't wear it?
Poppy, no, I can't explain that. And you know why? Because I think this is the point where we've gotten to the point now where you are taking up so much of this conversation with your own fears. I really ask you to do your own work on this, because I'm not an anathema. I'm not also a scholarly expert. And really, this isn't my job to teach you this stuff. I've done my best to remind you that you are more than just a soapbox for bad propaganda. You are worth more than that.
Thank you. And Pat says every culture uses religion to justify its rules. And sexist cultures claim their religion tells them to be that way. But Islam has had more female presidents and national leaders than Christianity.
Yes. Yep. Also, can I say something really controversial?
Go on.
Do you
Controversial.
know?
Never. Go on.
So I found out something, and I literally was like cursing when I found it. So when we came over to Ireland, and came Sawyer, and then went down. We were staying in Wexford, and my friend took us to go see Our Lady's Island.
Oh, yeah. Go on. Yes.
And when I read the plaque that was on there, I was like, "You what? You what? You did what?" So the plaque that's on there talks about the fact that when the Druidry was being essentially pillaged by Christians and people coming in, that actually it wasn't called Our Lady's Island, it was called The Lady's Island, because the female druids were all sent to just go be on that island and circled. And in my head, I'm like, why? Why did that happen? Because and this is a bias of mine, women are incredible story keepers, right?
Mm-hmm.
When that baby and when that child is growing up, the stories are with the mum. Their mum tells them all this stuff in a lot of instances. I'm not saying it's just women, but and so I guess that's what I want to know. I want to know, like, what was the benefit to Druidry of doing that? And I don't know if anybody knows, because there will be a benefit. Like, life will have known that that is the right thing to do, but it was awful for the women at that time. So I guess I want to know, like, what have we managed to preserve and gain out of that happening?
So are you saying that the Ladies Island, so it's been kind of Christianized, our Ladies Island, which is
Yeah.
okay. You're saying women were sent there and forced to live there, or they chose to live there as a sanctuary, or
This I don't know. It said, what I remember reading it, but I can't remember what it said word for word. But and if anybody's online, they can look it up right now or whatever. But I remember reading it as if it said that they were sent to live there until, and they weren't allowed to leave, essentially.
I haven't. Funny, it's not far from me. Well, it's about an hour and a half, but I've never been
So
to the island.
and this is what's really interesting for me, is that is a part of Druidic history, because when you go and the church is there, you can see in the architecture of the church, you can see in the way that the people are, how the history and the traditions of Druidry were preserved, and hidden in, as they should be, and preserved. But I'm just curious to know and to understand from that area, what are we supposed to do with that commitment? Was it in the Three Cosmos? What's the name of that room? That is it, the Anchorite or something? Is it
the Anchorite cell? Yes.
Yeah. So, and I'm like, is it something like that, where actually people have done that? And what is this? What is our spiritual gift from that? And what do we do with it now? What do we take forward with it? Because, and I'm glad that this all came up, because I don't think that was gendered. Well, I mean, obviously it was, but I don't think it was. I think it was something that women uniquely were in their power to do, because it's like what's happening now. When you look in most organizing activist circles, it's the women that are driving everything forward. When you look at civil rights movements, the women were driving that forward. We hear about Malcolm X, we hear about Martin Luther King, but the women were the ones that did it, right? So, and it's the same in certain parts of history. In Islam, it's the same right the way through in parts of the Old Testament as well. Like, it, I think there is a wisdom within that island there that I don't know yet. So I'm going to go back and have a look. I'm not going to drink the water because it's poisonous, but yeah.
Well, now you're putting me to shame. Not quite to shame. That's an exaggeration. It's like, God, I better go and visit that. It's 2 hours away from me or whatever. And I haven't gone. And it's so the anchorites are both male and female. So we don't know in my one if there was male or female. But Julian of Norwich is the famous anchoress who sealed herself in. Yeah. And that was somebody who did that by choice. I suppose the modern day are the contemplative orders of religious people within Christianity, within Catholicism. I don't know if they're contemplative orders of Protestant nuns. I don't know. Where they would, at the time, that they never left the convent, they were in perpetual prayer. And that notion of the gift of perpetual prayer, perpetual meditation, has an important role. Yeah. Really, really has. And you hope that people are doing that of their own free will. But Sean says, Teresa of Avila once remarked that God has no hands but ours, which goes both ways when we're not aware of what's already in them when we offer them to others, the assumptions and bias we carry. Now, Poppy says, thank you for your information. And it's like when I've been in, say, Morocco, I've been there a number of times, and there are women who are very covered. You can just see their eyes. Others will wear a hijab and others are free. And we're all at the same event. We're eating at a restaurant, and it's like everybody's just, hot pot of different expressions. And I think I grew up as a Roman Catholic, and women always had to have their head covered going into the church. That's changed now. But I remember the sexism within Christianity, and just look what's happening in the US.
Yeah.
People, how awful that is. It's like, I think Islam is an easy target. I think we all need to look at our own cultures and what is happening. And it's easy to fear those people over there are raping our women. It's like, what are you doing in your own home?
Right. And I think this is the thing, like, it's not in the same way that we as people just living our lives are intersectional, so are villains. You know, villains are also intersectional.
Yeah.
Oh, here, hang on. There was a place of druidic worship known as the Island of White Women. Hello. Sorry, that's my husband.
Oh, you're John. Okay, lovely, lovely.
Yeah. When the early Christians arrived at the island, in the druidesses had long been. What's the rest of that, John?
It's coming now.
Been
Had
banished.
long been banished. That's
Oh,
from
that's
the
from the
sign.
sign. Oh, amazing, amazing. That's my husband, everyone.
Okay, so it was a place of Druidic worship. And then
Yes.
by the time the early Christians arrived, the island, the Druids had long been banished. That's from the sign at the start of the route. So they weren't locked there, but that was a place of Druidic worship, a sacred place for
So,
them.
so they must have just gone there voluntarily then.
Yeah, I think it might
That's
have
great.
been, a sacred space that they would choose to live there. And that is really fascinating. Okay.
Yeah. And then see, this is why like the all of the stuff, all of the oral traditions and all of the stories that come through in all of these places, like everything, 60% of that stuff is just the story. But that 40%, that's stuff that's factual, that's gold. That is stuff that we really need to know, because these are things that we just don't now. We don't understand about collective work as much as they did before. We don't understand about what that means and how we sacrifice in order to do that. And also what joy it is to see everybody free and get better because everybody sacrificed a little bit to give to everyone else. Like, it's just, I don't know how to do it myself, but I'm trying to learn.
Oh, that's brilliant. This has been such. So when you're going through the Gwers, I'm
Yes.
not naming them. How do you weave, or do you weave in Islam, or do you? So if I don't know if you have a daily practice,
Yes.
or if you were doing one of the Wheel of the Years, I don't know if you do it like an individual practice. Would you weave in some Islamic practice or words, or would you call in Allah, for example? I don't know if you do that anyway.
Yeah. So whenever we've been at the ceremonies, or whenever we've been doing, or whenever I've been doing the practice, the opening prayer in Obad, as it's written, the one that goes, "Oh Spirit, grant thy protection." That I, in my way, I change that, because in Islam we have 99 names of Allah that's written mostly throughout the Quran, and they all mean different things. So Al-Hakim, the wise, Al-Adil, I think, is just, Al-Rahman, like mercy, As-Salam, peace, And so when you go through the Druid prayer, when I'm there, I'm like, oh Allah, grant thy protection, and I'm calling those names.
And those 99 names, yeah.
Yeah, well, not all of them, but just the ones that are relevant to that. Because in fact, and that's how, when I came to the summer gathering, that's how I ended up writing it out, because it's really, So for me, it would be, oh Allah, grant thy protection, Al Muhaimin, and in protection thy strength, Al Qawum, no, Qawi, and in strength understanding, Al Hakim, and in understanding knowledge, Ali Al Alim, and in knowledge the knowledge of justice, Al Adil, and something else which I can't read that. And in knowledge of justice, the love of it, Al Wali. Al Wali is like the friend. It's like, it's one of my favorite names. It's the Al Wali is like Allah's my mate, and and that's it, yeah, it's quite cute. And then and in the love of it, the love of all existences, and that's al-wadud, and in the love of all existences, al-khabir, the love of Allah. And then you've got things like al-malik al-mulk, which is the sovereign of all sovereigns. And so for me, that's how that works, because there's a directive in the Quran which is like, essentially it's saying, when you call Allah sincerely, Allah answers. And the same way I would imagine it's for most people that are in Obod, that follow a spiritual path. When you make that connection, you bring your whole self, and whatever spiritual thing that meets you. It's very similar to the Samhain ritual, where you go and you take something to the koyach in that northwest corner, and so when I do my stuff, when you call peace at the corners, at the end of every prayer, when we're there and we're sat down, we, to the right and to the left, we say assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi, assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi, which is basically peace and mercy to everyone over there, peace and mercy to everyone over there. So that's all I do when I'm giving peace to the corners. I'm saying assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi. And when you think about the great bear, or when you think about that stag or the salmon or the eagle, or whatever you think about these animals, I'm not just thinking about the animal, and like, because in Islam, all of these creatures are just constantly rejoicing in creation. They're rejoicing, they understand their nature, they live their nature, and they're rejoicing in the fact that they have been created. And it's really interesting. This is another thing that Ankhar and Wynne said, is that when you really practice gratitude, your vibration harmonizes with nature's vibration. And that told me everything. I'm like, well, this is it. This is what the Quran's talking about. Or when it says all of creation glorifies and says, thank you, I'm alive, thank you for this. That's what that is. So whenever I'm really, like, we have this concept called tawakkul, which I'm really bad at, which is whatever happens to you, whatever calamity, can you say alhamdulillah? Like, can you say God is great? Can you say thanks for that? And I'm trying my best to practice it with, like, more than mentally, without bypassing it, because that level of gratitude changes things.
Of course it does.
And so, yeah, that's just where I'm at. And that's what I mean. If that answers your question.
I think, that prayer should be, I just love what you've done with the Druids prayer. Absolutely. I think it's beautiful. Like, I've translated into Irish, Christopher's translated into Welsh, and people have done it in their own languages, but to weave in, the different names for Allah, based on what we're calling in, I think it's just incredible. I think it's beautiful. Absolutely beautiful. Sean says, I love this. I love seeing how Druidry takes root in the home of another, the soil of another. Poppy says, that's the beauty of Druidry, to be able to do that and never be judged. And I think it's just lovely. The great response to our conversation, but weaving this and finding the magic and the love and the joy. And I suppose when you can engage in the Druids' prayer in that way, then that shows Islam at its best. Do you know what I mean? And that where Druidry and Islam meet, because it's those threads that we need to be looking for all the time. Is where are our points of meeting, and when we can do that and appreciate those points, then we can appreciate difference.
Yeah.
Because difference is also important. We're not a soup.
100%.
Like I say, you're a biryani, I'm a salad. But you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that's.
But also, it's that thing that Lilith and I were talking about, which is, you're you, I'm me, but we are really important. Even when we are on opposite sides of the conversation, we don't create something new. We don't make a new world unless we both bring ourselves together.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, I think this has been we've gone over.
Oh,
It's been
yeah, sorry.
really, no. It's been a really, really enjoyable conversation. And, uh, I'm so glad I met you in the summer gathering, seen you all
Same.
dressed up.
No, honestly, thank you. And this has been lovely. I rarely get the chance to speak like this with people for this length of time. So, and it's been really lovely hearing people's, like having everyone's input, because I'm so grateful to everyone, because it's given me more revelation while I've been here. So yeah, thanks.
This is what I love about these conversations is that, our viewers are there throwing in questions, writing comments. I didn't get to, address all of them because some of them are very long, and then some come, there's none for a while, and then they all come quickly and I can't deal with them. But they're always a very interesting group of people wanting to engage with the story. So Morgan says, I've thoroughly enjoyed tonight's chat. Shukran, Tuan. Love this. Thank you. Great. Thank you both. So I'm going to allow you say goodnight to everybody, because it's nighttime now where you and I are.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean, good night, everyone. Oh, can I make a wish for everyone?
Absolutely, and you can do it whatever language you wish.
It'll be in English, but good night, everyone. I hope that when you rest your head to the pillow tonight and you think about your relationship to the bed and your loved ones and the rest of the world, I hope that as you drift off to sleep, peace finds you, and that in the middle of your deepest of dreams, you play and rejoice, and that all of that playtime rests your soul. Yeah, enjoy.
That is so beautiful. Just a message from Ricky, of course, always the affirming one. You know Ricky, do you?
No. Oh no.
Oh,
Hang on. Are you Ricky? Are you queer, bud?
yes.
Yeah, man. Yeah.
He would call it, usually in black with lots of rainbows on him, a colourful character, not a bad chinwag. Thanks muchly, Eimear and Bowen. And then Karen
Amazing.
says, thank you. Such a thought-provoking and informative conversation, and the similarities and connections between Islam and Druidry. Blessings on your journey. So I'm going to send you back through the veil, but we can look at the comments after we've gone off the air. So I'll just say, it's been such a joy talking to you, Duhan, and I look forward to meeting you in
A week.
more than a week.
Yes. Yeah. I'll see you in a bit. Thank you very much, Eimear. Thanks.
Stay on the line, and I'll
Slow.
So thank you all very, very much for joining us this evening, and I hope you enjoyed the conversation as much as I did. It has been wonderful. So I will see you in 2 weeks, because we're going to, next week, we'll have our winter gathering in Glastonbury Street. So have a good day, good night to you, good morning to you, good afternoon to you, wherever you are in the world. And if you're listening to a recording of this conversation. So be well and be slán until we meet again. Slán go forward.